Hello, this is Robert Ellis from DSP Plug, and sometimes I'll go on about DSP and data and what it can do. Well, let's talk about society control. Society control might seem pretty scary, but it is not so scary, and society as a whole already has various controls. When you look at society, you think of politicians, democracy, communism, imperialism, and all of those things are the leadership structure. And and below those tiers of the hierarchies of each respective leadership structure, below that there are means by which each state, province, and municipality is governed, whether it be governors or some obscure form of state, so as to cater to a specific people, sometimes people who are not necessarily indigenous to the area, merely out of respect. And this has been the way that society has been governed for quite a long time. And of course, conquerors too, of the old, they had their own mechanisms for governing over society. And what would technology do? What would digital signal processing do? Well, I have made a few posts and I have spoken or written, as you will, in regards to technology, but it is quite simple. And herein lies the issue: is power. And what I mean is electrical power. A satellite's ability to provide its own power, likely by solar generated panels on either side or something to that effect, but moreover, proximity. And what that would entail is a satellite moving around the world, has an orbital decay. It is circling around the world. It is just kind of surfing over the top of what we know as the ozone layer, isn't it? And the reason why that is so important is the world is not spinning in a perfectly round fashion. The world is like a beach ball. It is like a beach ball. See? A beach ball. And the beach ball, as you might imagine, when you try and spin it, it wobbles a little. You can, kind of like a basketball player. Basketball holds on the finger and it spins, but it doesn't spin perfectly, does it? It has a slight variance. That variance can be ascertained by two sensors, one in each pole. And of course, by doing this, you would be enabled to measure the perfect circumference of the Earth without any doubt, because the electrical signal has to go from the top to the bottom. Now, once those sensors are in place, using those sensors to judge what is beyond the Earth becomes possible to a certain degree. Like there would be a certain realm of statistics available which were congruous. Congruous meaning that it is data that can be read by a machine. There are beyond the Earth, for instance, right? Maybe a few thousand meters, if you will. That data would be less than finite. It wouldn't be perfect. But whilst this sensor is there, the diameter of the Earth can be ascertained, and therefore GPS and these all of our systems, all of the digital systems that we utilize each day can be perfected and honed and attuned. But that's where it goes a little bit further. We all know we have satellites, and satellites play an important role in our lives each day, whether it be Doppler, whether it be weather. But what about proximity to the Earth? The Earth is turning, yes. And the satellite's turning in turn, yes. But what of the wobble? When a satellite's camera or sensors are looking down upon the Earth as it is moving so fast also is wobbling. See, as it turns, like on a basketball player's finger, it is wobbling. So these two sensors on the poles allow the diameter to be ascertained and the mathematics to be formulated, but also the wobble. And why is that so important? Because of the orbital decay, which is independent of the Earth's orbital axis. The Earth's orbital axis has a slight decay, meaning that a camera, due to the speed of light, is only seeing images at a certain time frame. While they look smooth, there is a wobble, and there are adjustments built right in. But what this will allow is data, and data means something very extraordinary. Data allows drones to fly around the Earth with medbots. And what medbots can be is a remotely controlled surgical drone. Anytime somebody is in physical jeopardy, a drone can drop down and go to the person, and then paramedics can be on their way. It might even be able to do surgery. Likely it would have a little pad, or it would look for signs of recognition. It would stabilize you, wake you, and tell you that eventually you'd have to pay in installments so as to be brought back to life. And you would have to acknowledge that somehow, either mentally or physically. And once you did, you could be brought back to life. And as you might imagine, that would also affect things like security. I'm sure that based upon this technology's inception, like the beginning of this technology would first start in secure communities. So richer, well-off, middle class would live in certain communities where these sensors can sense people, and furthermore, assailants. It senses people trying to rob their house. It senses people trying to hurt one another in some way or fashion. And then the authorities are automatically called. Well, that stems from it many questions, does it not? It does indeed. And those questions would specifically be privacy, right to privacy, and furthermore, it would ask the question, how lawful is lawful? Well, a system like this can be built with a very simple grid, and I was looking at old Egyptian artwork, and something like a relief, a carving, And it talks about the Eye of Thoth, the all-seeing eye. The all-seeing eye is a cylinder, you see, with a kind of ovular 3D round top. Well, it inspired me and it made me realize that if you were to just take a cylinder and then have a circle in the middle, that you could use that as a mathematical constant, turn it on its side, turn it around, and then that makes a perfect globe. And why that is so relevant is the y-axis, the z-axis going downwards through the middle of that cylinder allows to compensate and consider the wobble. By considering the wobble of the Earth itself, that cylinder being the world, the circle that is created from it, you are able to detect exactly the measurements of the world turning. And why that is so important is because the orbital decay of satellites. Satellites become the means by which data is provided to the Earth below. It is provided to the computers. The more accurate it is, should there be any power loss or any data loss in these little robots, I'm sure these robots could have various functions: law enforcement, security, and surgeons, surgical robots, probably remotely manned. It would allow them to see exactly where they were, what was up, what was down, without having to base all of their calculations upon the ground level. And that is amazing, especially for people, for instance, who are trapped in caves, especially, for instance, people who are trapped in small, confined areas which don't necessarily constitute a building. They don't necessarily constitute an area that one of these drones could get to, but perhaps it could. And that takes us to our next level up, is law enforcement. And furthermore, intelligence. What would that mean? What it would mean is that if responsibly applied, algorithms and subroutines can be created so as to map the world and then divide the world by grids, utilizing the same Eye of Thoth method. And what this allows society to do is to make sure that those statistics, especially utilizing these polls, are only available to the specific governments that govern over these lands. And that could be divvied out publicly. Odds are the public would have a lo-fi version using less decimals. And then the government would have access to all of these peripherals with more decimals. So in other words, built right into the very beginning of the code, only the country affected, only the country that is able, politicians, policemen, workers from that country who have the right ranking will be able to see those statistics. But what about people? These subroutines can allow law-abiding people to live their whole lives in entire privacy. And what that means is are they doing anything illegal? Are they buying anything that is illegal? Are they harboring fugitives? Are they harboring illegal people? Are they helping any illegal process? All of this AI, all of this technology could log all of this stuff, but it probably wouldn't dispatch police officers automatically unless there was some need. And that comes from subroutines, algorithms. It is the most basic thing. One could truly live all of her or his life in complete peace without the worry of possible murder, possibly being harmed by other people because of the realization that because of such a technology would allow police to see a greater extent of crime. They would be only at first busting tens of thousands of people, which would be a great benefit to the police departments, allowing them to hire 20 times as many people. And they would automatically be told that there was a crime happening, that someone was being assaulted, that someone was doing harm to another person. So the law abiding person has a file that says nothing. But the person who is not law abiding has a file that says something. Yes, technology could technically see everyone, but can it already? Ultraviolet is very good. Ultraviolet can even be taken to the level where it can detect the actual person's identity based upon biorhythms. All of these things can be done already. So why not fine tune it? Why not make it into a system? And it could very well be the end of crime. It could very well be the end of murder. The world has been working towards the state in which data can govern our existence. Imagine what the economy could be when crime and industrial saboteurs are a thing of the past. These ideas can change the world, but the problem is the governance over them and the divvying of power. And that is why technology keeps us honest. As people, sometimes we lie, sometimes we fool one another. And digital signal processing allows that process to be a moral one. While I think there is a lot of paranoid thoughts about these concepts, could potentially be a violence-free, a murder-free, a rape-free, and sexually assault-free world. And a world like that is a world that everyone wants to live. This is Robert from DSP Plug explaining society control and how it might affect us utilizing digital signal processing. Bye bye.